A torch flickers against a cave wall, illuminating paintings older than civilization itself. These are not random marks, but messages from our deepest ancestry, waiting to be decoded. By the end of this journey, you will understand the very origins of human thought and what these primal images reveal about your own mind. Why did our ancestors risk everything to paint in total darkness? And what secret meanings are hidden in their abstract symbols and handprints? The clues in cave walls offer a direct line to our collective beginnings. What part of this ancient story feels most connected to you? The air inside these caves is cool and still, a profound silence broken only by the drip of water. This was not a random shelter, but a chosen gallery. Our ancestors did not simply paint on the first wall they found. They ventured deep underground, seeking out specific chambers with particular qualities. In places like Altamira in Spain, the cave ceilings were smooth and expansive, perfect for large paintings of bison. The acoustics in certain chambers amplified sound, making them ideal for chanting or ritual. Archaeologists like Jean Klotz believe these caves were seen as portals to another world, a spiritual underground. Entering them was a deliberate act. It required planning, carrying torches and pigments into the absolute dark. It demanded courage to move beyond the reach of sunlight. This was no casual doodling. The journey itself, the descent into the earth, was a core part of the experience. It hints at early rites of passage, a form of pilgrimage where the physical challenge mirrored an inner transformation. The cave was not just a canvas, it was a vital character in the story being told. To understand the paintings, we must first feel the weight of the space that contains them. And the story truly begins with the very first marks they dared to make. That first mark on the wall was a revolution. It began with a hand. Picture an early human, not with a brush, but with a hand coated in wet clay or a mouthful of ochre-rich pigment. They would press their palm against the stone or place it down and blow a spray of paint over it, leaving a perfect, haunting negative image behind. These are the hand stencils of places like El Castillo in Spain, some dating back over 40,000 years. They are not mere graffiti. Each one is a profound declaration. I was here, this is me. In that simple act, something extraordinary was born, the spark of symbolic thought. It is the moment a mark ceases to be just a mark and becomes a representation of an idea, of a self. Before this, tools were made for physical tasks like scraping or cutting, but a handprint on a wall serves no immediate survival purpose. Its value is entirely in the mind. It communicates identity, it claims a space, it says, a person made this. This cognitive leap is what truly separates modern humans from other hominins. It is the foundation for everything that followed: language, art, complex culture. The ability to think abstractly, to represent reality with a symbol, freed our ancestors from the immediate present. They could now reference the past, imagine the future, and share ideas that transcended the hunt for the next meal. These humble handprints and the gentle grooves left by fingers tracing lines in soft clay, known as finger flutings, were the very first steps on a path that would lead to the great painted narratives of bison and horses. They are the primal roots from which all of our storytelling would grow. From that first declaration of self emerged a living, breathing world of beasts. The cave walls themselves seem to pulse with the energy of bison, horses, and mammoths, their forms captured with a stunning vitality that defies the passage of millennia. In the deep dark of Lascaux, a bull charges across the stone, its legs a blur of motion, its power almost audible. This is far more than simple decoration. These animals were central to the very survival and spiritual existence of Paleolithic people. Their incredible anatomical accuracy, the precise curve of a shoulder, the alert set of an ear, speaks of a relationship forged not from casual observation, but from a life of intense dependence. They knew these animals in a way we can scarcely comprehend, every muscle and movement a matter of life and death. But why pour such meticulous effort into these images deep within the earth? Researchers like David Lewis Williams propose that these galleries were not just pictures but portals. The animals might have served as spirit guides for shamans venturing into trance states, or as powerful totems representing different clans. A successful hunt was not just about food, it was a sacred exchange between the human and animal worlds. Painting the prey, perhaps, was a way to honor that spirit, to ensure its return, or to magically influence the outcome of a future chase. The choice of animals often mirrors the local fauna, a direct reflection of their environment. Yet some caves hold mysteries. The Chauvet Cave in France features creatures that seem to spring from pure imagination, like a strange, chimeric beast with the body of a bison and the horns of something entirely other. This reveals a mind capable of conjuring the mythical, of blending reality with a rich inner world. The techniques used to create these masterpieces further shatter any notion of primitive art. Artists used the natural contours of the rock to give their subjects volume, creating a rudimentary perspective. They used shading and different densities of pigment to suggest depth and movement. They were not just drawing on a wall, they were collaborating with it, bringing forth the animal they believed lived within the stone itself. As we stand in awe of these magnificent creatures, we must remember the human hands that conjured them. Who were these artists and what drove them to such profound expression in the silent, sacred dark? Yet among this vibrant bestiary, one figure is conspicuously absent, a realistic human. The artists who captured the very soul of a bison with breathtaking accuracy seem to turn away from their own reflections. When the human form does appear, it is often strange and distorted. In the Trois Freres cave in France, a famous figure known as the sorcerer stares out from the rock. He is part man, part stag, with the legs of a human, the antlers of a deer, and the eyes of an owl. This is not a portrait, it is a transformation. This profound avoidance of realistic human likeness is one of the deepest puzzles of Paleolithic art. Why fill caves with perfect animals, but only offer fragmented or masked versions of themselves? The answer likely lies in a fundamental difference in how these early people saw their place in the world. For them, the universe was not a hierarchy with humans at the top. It was an animistic web of life where every animal, rock, and stream possessed a spirit and a power. Humans were just one thread in that vast, living tapestry. In such a worldview, depicting a specific human individual might have been taboo, or perhaps it was simply unimportant compared to connecting with the greater forces that govern survival. The composite creatures, then, are not monsters. They are likely representations of spiritual specialists, shamans who are believed to traverse the boundaries between worlds. In deep trance states, perhaps induced by rhythmic drumming, sensory deprivation, or even natural substances, these individuals might have felt they were merging with an animal spirit, gaining its knowledge or power for the benefit of the group. The art was not a literal diary of their days. It was a visual map of their cosmology, a sacred language for interacting with the unseen. So the mystery of the missing human form pushes us to look beyond literal representation. It forces us to ask, if they were not drawing themselves, what other, more abstract codes were they leaving behind? These abstract codes are the silent grammar of the cave. Scattered among the vibrant herds of bison and horses, you find them: simple dots, straight lines, zigzags, and chevrons etched or painted onto the stone. For generations, these geometric patterns were dismissed as random doodles, the idle scratches of an artist waiting for inspiration. But what if we have been overlooking humanity's first attempt at a written language? Researcher Genevieve von Petzinger made a startling discovery after systematically cataloging these signs across hundreds of European caves. She found that our ancient ancestors were not creating an infinite variety of random shapes. Instead, they were using a surprisingly limited set of just 32 distinct signs, repeated consistently across tens of thousands of years and thousands of miles. This is not the behavior of random decoration. This is the hallmark of a shared system of communication. A dot might represent a person or the sun. A line could be a spear or a path. A series of strokes might count the phases of the moon or the number of animals in a migration. The aviform, that distinctive wing-shaped or teepee-like sign, appears in multiple caves separated by vast distances. Its repeated use strongly suggests it held a specific, recognized meaning for these communities, a concept that could be understood from one region to another. The true power of this proto-writing may have emerged in combination with the animal figures. A zigzag next to a horse might tell a story of a lightning storm during a hunt. A cluster of dots beneath a mammoth could record a successful kill or denote a sacred birthing ground. These signs were likely the building blocks for recording myths, mapping territories, or marking astronomical events. Deciphering this code is like trying to listen to a whisper from 40,000 years ago. We have the symbols, but we have lost the key to their sound, their specific meaning. Yet their mere existence is revolutionary. It means that the human drive to represent ideas with abstract symbols, the very foundation of writing, did not begin with the Sumerians and their cuneiform 5,000 years ago. It began here in the flickering torchlight of the deep caves with the first person who drew a line and agreed with their community that this line stood for something more. This sophisticated system of symbols required more than just a creative mind. It demanded a sophisticated toolkit to bring these enduring messages to life. To create a line that would last 40,000 years, you needed more than just inspiration. You needed a chemist's knowledge. The vibrant reds, deep yellows, and stark blacks we see today were engineered from the very earth beneath their feet. Red and yellow came from ochre, an iron-rich clay that could be dug from the ground and heated to intensify its color. Black was sourced from manganese dioxide or the charcoal of a spent fire, while white was derived from kaolin clay or crushed calcite. But raw pigment powder is useless on a rough stone wall, so these early artists invented a binder, mixing their powdered colors with animal fat, urine, or even egg white to create a thick, adhesive paint that would cling to the rock face. This was humanity's first paint recipe, a deliberate alchemy that transformed simple dirt into a medium for eternal expression. Their tools were an extension of this resourcefulness. Brushes were crafted from tufts of animal hair or frayed twigs. They used pads of moss-like sponges to dab on color, and of course, their own fingers and hands remained the most direct tools of all. But how did they even see to work in the absolute blackness of chambers deep within the earth? They were masters of light as well as color. They fashioned stone lamps, simple hollows in a rock that could hold animal fat with a wick of moss. This provided a steady, flickering flame that would illuminate their sacred canvas, casting dynamic shadows that may have made the painted animals seem to breathe and move. The incredible longevity of these paintings is the ultimate testament to their technical skill. The recipes they developed were so effective that the art has survived in stunning vibrancy, outlasting entire civilizations. This was not the haphazard daubing of primitives. It was the work of sophisticated minds, engineers, and artists who understood the properties of their world and manipulated them to send a message across the abyss of time. With their toolkit complete, the stage was set. The cave itself awaited, a sacred space ready to be transformed. These deep chambers were not homes but hallowed ground. To enter them, our ancestors often had to crawl on their bellies through narrow, claustrophobic tunnels, a physical trial that separated the everyday world from the sacred one. This was not a practical choice for a dwelling. It was a deliberate act of passage, a way to leave the ordinary behind and cross a threshold into a realm of power. The art itself confirms this purpose. In many caves, paintings are not spread evenly across the walls. They cluster in specific chambers, often the most difficult to reach. And in these special rooms, the images accumulate over generations. A magnificent bison might be painted over a much older horse, which itself covers a series of cryptic dots. This was not a lack of space, it was an act of connection. Each new artist was adding their voice to a chorus that spanned centuries, reinforcing the spiritual potency of that exact spot. The Cave of Niox in France offers a profound clue to what happened in these spaces. Some of the most beautifully painted chambers also have remarkable acoustics. A single voice or the beat of a hand drum would resonate, filling the cavern with an otherworldly echo. Imagine the experience: the flicker of lamp light on painted herds, the thunderous sound of chanting rising from the depths. This was a full sensory ritual designed to alter consciousness and bridge worlds. The scholar Mircea Eliade called such places Axis Mundi, the center of the world. For the people who gathered there, the cave was not just a hole in a hill. It was a cosmic pivot point, a direct link between the human community and the realm of animal spirits and ancestors. Creating art here was far more than decoration. It was an act of communion, a way to touch the divine forces that controlled the weather and the migration of the herds. A hand stencil was a signature of presence. A painted bison was a plea for life itself. These caves were the world's first cathedrals, built not of stone blocks, but of living rock, where every painting was a prayer and every ritual a negotiation for survival. This shamanistic worldview, where the seen and unseen worlds constantly interact, reveals a mindscape as complex and profound as our own. But how do we know this connection to the spirit world was real for them, and not just our modern interpretation? The evidence is not only on the walls, but in the very minds of the artists who created them. The cave wall was not a barrier, but a veil. This idea transforms our understanding of every dot and every beast. A powerful and prevalent theory suggests these deep chambers were stages for shamanistic journeys, and the art itself is a fossilized record of the human mind crossing into altered states of consciousness. Isolated in the profound dark and silence, with only the flicker of a lamp and the rhythmic beat of a drum, a shaman's brain could easily slip into a trance. Anthropologist David Lewis Williams draws a direct line from the human nervous system to the cave wall. He points out that in the early stages of a trance, people often see luminous, geometric patterns flashing behind their eyelids, patterns known as entoptic phenomena. These are not images from the outside world, but generated from within the brain itself. And remarkably, these are the very same shapes we find repeated in the caves, the grids, zigzags, and dots that were once dismissed as simple decoration. They may be the first visual language of the human spirit, a universal grammar of the mind's eye. As the trance deepens, the brain tries to make sense of these pulsing forms, interpreting them as recognizable things, often animals of deep cultural significance. This could explain why a shaman in an altered state might perceive a vibrating zigzag as a serpent or a cluster of dots as a herd of bison emerging from the stone. This process of projection turns the cave wall into a living screen for visions. And then we have the Orianthropes, those breathtaking figures that are part human and part animal. The sorcerer of Trois Freres is the ultimate example. He is not a monster, but perhaps a portrait of the shaman in the midst of his transformation. The moment he feels his consciousness merge with the spirit of the stag, gaining its speed, its grace, its connection to the forest. In this framework, painting was not about creating a pretty picture. It was an act of spiritual technology. By fixing these visions onto the rock, the shaman was making the intangible tangible, capturing the power of the spirit world and anchoring it for the community. The act itself was a ritual. In some caves, like Tuc d'Audebert in France, the preserved clay floor holds the footprints of adolescents, their steps suggesting a ritual dance. These are not the scuff marks of daily life, but the traces of a ceremony, a collective effort to engage with the forces that govern their world. This art was functional, a tool for healing, for divination, for ensuring the hunt's success. It explains the powerful, otherworldly energy that still radiates from these images tens of thousands of years later. They were not meant to be merely seen, but to be experienced as portals to a reality just beyond our ordinary sight. And while the visions have faded, the physical evidence of the artists themselves remains, etched into the very floors they walked upon. These personal signatures in pigment and clay are more than just marks, they are frozen moments of human presence. The hand stencils that cover cave walls from Indonesia to Spain are deeply intimate. Each one reveals the unique size and shape of an individual's hand. Some show distinct characteristics like a crooked finger or a particular palm shape, while others are hauntingly incomplete with fingers clearly missing. For years, the assumption was that these powerful images were the work of male hunters, perhaps recording their trophies or performing hunting magic. But a meticulous analysis of hand stencils, particularly at sites like El Castillo and Garges in France, has completely overturned that idea. By studying the relative lengths of the fingers, researchers like Dean Snow discovered that a significant number of these handprints were likely made by women. Many others show the smaller, more slender proportions of adolescent hands. This simple forensic finding reshapes our entire understanding of these sacred spaces. The caves were not a male-only sanctuary. They were a communal canvas where women and young people played a central, perhaps even leading, role in the rituals that bound their society together. The art was a collective effort, a spiritual practice that involved the entire community. On the floor of the Tuc d'Audebert cave, another kind of trace survives. In the soft, damp clay, footprints have been preserved for over 14,000 years. They are not the random scuffs of passage, but a deliberate path. The prints show individuals walking carefully, sometimes crawling through low tunnels, their knees and heels leaving impressions in the mud. In one chamber, the footprints suggest a different kind of movement, a pattern that could be interpreted as a ritual dance, a slow, rhythmic circling in the flickering dark. These are not just footprints, they are a record of a journey, a physical map of a spiritual quest. To stand where they stood, to see the very spot where a teenager's bare foot pressed into the clay, is to feel a connection that transcends time. It collapses the millennia between us, reminding us with stunning clarity that these were not abstract ancestors, but real people who laughed, feared, and sought meaning in a vast and unpredictable world. Their handprints say, "I was here." Their footprints show us how they moved through their world, a world they built not in isolation, but together, as a community bound by shared beliefs and a common struggle for survival. This collaborative effort leaves a fossilized imprint of the entire community's social structure. A single person could not paint the Great Hall of the Bulls in Lascaux alone. The sheer scale and complexity of these projects required a team. One person would have to manage the precious stone lamps, ensuring the light never failed. Another would be responsible for grinding the ochre and mixing it with animal fat to create the paint. Yet another, perhaps someone with a keen eye and a steady hand, would climb the scaffolding to outline the great beasts on the ceiling. This level of coordination implies more than just a group of people working together. It suggests shared knowledge passed down through generations and possibly even specialized roles. There might have been master artists, skilled pigment preparers, and keepers of the sacred spaces. This is the blueprint for complex society, a glimpse of the cooperation that would eventually build cities. The recurring themes we see across a region, the same way of drawing a bison or using a specific set of dots, act as a cultural signature. They tell us that these people shared a common identity, a unified way of seeing the world that was taught to each new generation. The location of the art itself, hidden away in deep chambers yet created by and for the group, reveals its social purpose. These were not public billboards, but private, powerful spaces for strengthening the bonds that held the tribe together. Initiating the young into the tribe's most sacred beliefs likely happened here, in the flickering light before the painted spirits of their world. The art itself maps their social relationships. Could the majestic bison have been the totem of one family line, while the swift horse represented another? A cluster of handprints on a specific panel might record the members of a successful hunting party, or mark the moment adolescents became full members of the community. Every symbol was a thread in the fabric of their society. This collective spirit, this shared cultural identity, was the engine that carried their artistic traditions forward. It was this very social cohesion that allowed their knowledge to walk, to travel with them as they moved across the ancient landscape. The story of our origins does not belong to a single continent. While the caves of Lascaux and Altamira are rightly famous, they are just one chapter in a global epic written on stone. In the lush mountains of Sulawesi, Indonesia, the Ling Tedong cave holds hand stencils that are at least 45,500 years old, a date that rivals and may even surpass the oldest art in Europe. On the other side of the world, in the vast deserts of Australia, ancient artists painted on rock shelters for tens of thousands of years. This is not a coincidence. It is a profound pattern. The simultaneous emergence of this art across the globe points to something deep within us, a universal human capacity for symbolic thought that ignited as our species spread. The similarities are startling. A person in what is now Spain pressed a hand against a wall and blue-red pigment over it. A person in Indonesia, separated by an entire world of ocean and jungle, performed the exact same act. Both were saying the same thing, I am here. Both were using the same fundamental technique to declare their existence. They also painted the animals they knew. In Europe, it was bison and mammoths. In Sulawesi, it was the warty pig, a local species captured with the same stunning vitality. In Australia, it was kangaroos and emus. The subjects were local, but the creative impulse was universal. This global tapestry suggests that the potential for this kind of complex expression was not a cultural invention that slowly spread from one place. It was part of the basic cognitive toolkit that every group of Homo sapiens carried with them as they journeyed out of Africa. This forces a dramatic reconsideration of our own timeline. The human mind, with its ability to think in symbols and represent the world through art, was already fully modern, already capable of these profound abstractions, far earlier than we once believed. The question then becomes, did this shared impulse lead to entirely independent discoveries, or were there connections we have yet to trace? The age of a single painting can shatter our entire understanding of human history. For decades, dating cave art was guesswork, based on the style of the animals or the age of debris found on the floor. Then came radiocarbon dating, a revolutionary tool that worked like a molecular clock. Since many pigments were made from charcoal or organic binders, scientists could finally measure the decay of carbon-14 in the paint itself, getting a direct date for the moment a tree became a tool for art. But this method had its limits. It could only date art made with organic materials and nothing older than around 50,000 years. The true breakthrough arrived with a different kind of clock, one hidden in the cave walls themselves. Over millennia, water seeping through limestone deposits microscopic layers of a mineral called calcite over the paintings. This calcite contains tiny traces of uranium. As the uranium slowly decays into thorium at a fixed, known rate, scientists can measure the ratio of these elements to determine the minimum age of the art underneath. It is like reading the rings of a tree that grew over a masterpiece. This uranium-thorium dating does not date the paint, it dates the blanket that time has drawn over it. Using this technique, researchers made a staggering discovery at El Castillo cave in Spain. A simple red disc was dated to at least 40,800 years ago. This single dot, one of the oldest known symbols in Europe, was created at a pivotal and mysterious crossroads in time. This was the very era when modern humans first entered Europe, a continent still inhabited by our robust cousins, the Neanderthals. The date is so early that it ignites a profound and controversial question. Who held the lamp to paint that red dot? Was it a Homo sapiens, the ancestor we assume was capable of such abstract thought? Or could it have been a Neanderthal? For generations, we have defined ourselves by our unique creativity, believing symbolic thought and complex art were the exclusive spark of our own species. This single date challenges that deep-seated narrative, suggesting the cognitive roots of art may run much deeper in the human family tree than we ever dared to believe. The timeline that emerges is not a smooth, steady progression. It reveals bursts of incredible creativity separated by vast stretches of time. The Chauvet Cave in France, with its breathtaking, confident masterpieces of lions and rhinos, was created in a flurry of activity around 36,000 years ago. Its artists used techniques like perspective and shading that would not become common again for tens of thousands of years. Then, thousands of years later, the style shifts at Lascaux with its elegant, sweeping outlines of horses and bulls. Each cave is a time capsule, a fossilized snapshot of a specific cultural moment in the evolving human mind. Every dated handprint, every aged animal figure, is a crucial data point in the grand story of our consciousness. Pinpointing these moments with greater and greater accuracy allows us to ask better questions. Did a changing climate spark a new wave of art? Did a successful migration bring different groups into contact, fusing their artistic traditions? The quest to date the dawn of art is far from over. As our tools grow more sophisticated, we are learning to see the unseen, to find art that has been invisible to the human eye for thousands of years. A new technological lens is revealing a hidden world within these ancient caves. High-resolution 3D laser scanners now sweep through chambers like Lascaux, capturing every contour and crack with millimeter precision. This creates a perfect digital twin of the cave, a virtual space where researchers from across the globe can study the art for hours on end without ever exposing the fragile originals to the damaging moisture of human breath. For caves that are too dangerous or too narrow for people to enter, drones equipped with cameras fly into the darkness, using a technique called photogrammetry to stitch together thousands of overlapping photographs into a stunningly accurate three-dimensional model. But perhaps the most magical tools are those that let us see the unseen. Multispectral imaging uses specific wavelengths of light, far beyond what our eyes can detect, to illuminate the stone. A wall that appears blank to us might, under this spectral gaze, suddenly bloom with the faint, ghostly outline of a deer or a series of forgotten dots. These are the phantom paintings, images that faded from view millennia ago, their pigment now chemically bonded to the rock in a way that is invisible without technological help. Each recovered shape is another recovered word from a story we are still learning to read. The pigments themselves are now telling their own stories. Through chemical analysis, scientists can take a microscopic sample of red ochre and trace it back to its exact geological source, a specific iron-rich deposit miles away. When the paint in one cave is found to come from a quarry far distant, it reveals an ancient trade route or a seasonal migration pattern, mapping the social and economic connections of these prehistoric groups. They were not isolated clans, but networks of people moving across the landscape, carrying precious materials and ideas with them. From the sky, LiDAR technology fires laser pulses through dense forest canopies, digitally stripping away the vegetation to reveal the shape of the land beneath. This has led to the discovery of entire cave systems and rock shelters previously hidden by centuries of growth. Ground-penetrating radar sends signals deep into the earth, searching for hollow spaces that could conceal a new chamber, a new gallery of wonders waiting to be found. This is not merely adding data to old interpretations, it is fundamentally reshaping them. We are no longer looking at single paintings but at complex palimpsests. A 3D model might show that a magnificent bison was painted over a much older handprint, which itself was placed over a series of finger flutings. We can see the sequence of creation, the layers of meaning accumulated over hundreds of generations. This technological revolution is a new golden age of discovery, granting us a vision our ancestors could never have imagined. Yet with every new revelation comes a sobering reality, as we are forced to confront the fragile nature of this priceless inheritance. This fragile inheritance has survived against all odds, a testament to the perfect, stable darkness that guarded it for so long. Yet that very act of discovery, our own longing to connect with these ancient artists, now threatens to erase their work forever. The caves exist in a state of delicate balance, a microclimate that has remained unchanged for millennia. When we open a sealed cave to the public, we shatter that equilibrium. Our breath alone is a weapon, exhaling carbon dioxide, heat, and moisture that fuel the growth of destructive microorganisms. The world learned this devastating lesson at Lascaux. After its opening in the 1940s, the cave was soon plagued by what became known as the Green Sickness, a relentless invasion of algae and mold that spread across the priceless paintings. The lights that illuminated the art for tourists fed the growth, and the sheer volume of human presence fundamentally altered the cave's atmosphere. It was a crisis born of admiration, a paradox where the desire to see directly caused the art to fade. The response was drastic and necessary. Lascaux was permanently closed to the public, a heartbreaking but vital decision to save the gallery from our own good intentions. Natural forces continue their slow, patient work. Water seeping through the rock can carry dissolved minerals that form an opaque, white crust of calcite over the paintings, slowly obscuring them like a closing curtain. Minor rockfalls can smash a panel of art in an instant, while bacterial films, invisible to the naked eye, can digest the organic binders in the paint, causing it to flake away from the stone over centuries. But the most unpredictable new threat comes from a changing global climate. altered rainfall patterns can lead to sudden flooding in caves that have been dry for thousands of years, washing away fragile images painted in soft clay. Rising temperatures and humidity levels outside can destabilize the internal environment of a cave, triggering new cycles of erosion and microbial life. Add to this the ever-present risk of vandalism and looting, and the challenge becomes a race against time. The global solution has been one of remarkable innovation and sacrifice. We are building proxies for our wonder. For sites like Lascaux and Chauvet, exact, full-scale replicas have been painstakingly created. Lascaux IV is a technological marvel, a concrete canvas where master artists and engineers have recreated every brushstroke, every contour of the rock, using the same pigments and techniques as the originals. It is an act of profound respect, a way to satisfy our human need to stand in awe without causing further harm. These replicas are more than just copies. They are a bridge, allowing the public experience to continue while the originals rest in guarded silence. This is not a surrender, but a new form of stewardship. The ongoing battle to preserve these sites is a quiet, constant effort fought by scientists and conservators in the dark. It is a responsibility we hold for every generation to come, a promise to the hands that painted in the dark that their message will not be erased by the light. The very act of painting a bison on a wall reveals a brain undergoing a revolution. This was not merely a skillful hand copying what the eye could see. It was a mind capable of a profound leap, the leap of symbolic thought. A simple red ochre mark was no longer just a stain on the rock. In the minds of the artist and their community, it could become the sun, a wound, or the spirit of the herd. This ability to let one thing stand for another is the bedrock of human cognition. It is the same mental machinery that allows a child to understand that a squiggle on a page represents the sound of a letter, or that a green light means it is safe to proceed. Without this capacity for symbolism, there is no language, no mathematics, no shared culture. The cave was the first classroom where this foundational skill was practiced and perfected. But the artists were not painting for themselves alone. Each brushstroke was applied with an audience in mind, whether that audience was the rest of the tribe or the spirits of the world beyond. This implies a sophisticated theory of mind, the innate understanding that others have their own thoughts, beliefs, and perspectives. The painter knew that the person standing beside them would look at a series of dots and lines and see not random scratches but a record of the seasons. They anticipated the viewer's interpretation, crafting their work to communicate specific ideas and emotions. This social cognition was vital for the cooperation needed to survive in a harsh world, and the cave wall became a testing ground for this essential social glue. Consider the monumental effort behind a panel like the Hall of the Bulls at Lascaux. This was no spontaneous outburst of creativity. It was a project that demanded meticulous planning and coordination, hallmarks of what neuroscientists call executive function. Someone had to envision the final scene. They had to organize the gathering of materials, the preparation of pigments, the construction of scaffolding, and the management of light sources deep underground. This required holding a complex plan in working memory while solving a cascade of practical problems. The brain's prefrontal cortex, the seat of this advanced cognitive control, was firing on all cylinders. These early project managers were demonstrating the same neural circuitry that today allows an architect to design a skyscraper or a composer to orchestrate a symphony. The artists did more than just place images on the wall, they composed them. They used the natural contours of the rock to give a horse volume, creating a rudimentary form of perspective that makes the animal seem to emerge from the stone. They arranged figures in sequences that suggest movement, conflict, or a narrative event. A horse might be shown fleeing from a lion, telling a story of pursuit and danger. This is the birth of visual storytelling, the ability to compress time and action into a single, powerful frame. It is the direct ancestor of every comic book, every film storyboard, every graphic novel. They were learning to structure experience, to convey not just objects but events and relationships. Modern brain scans reveal something astonishing. When a person looks at a painting by Picasso, the visual cortex processes the image, but regions associated with emotion, meaning, and even our sense of self also light up with activity. When that same person is shown an image of a prehistoric bison from Chauvet, the exact same neural networks are activated. This suggests that our appreciation for art is not a learned cultural behavior, but a deep, hardwired feature of the human brain. We are biologically primed to find meaning and emotional resonance in symbolic representations. The cave artists were tapping into a universal aesthetic sense, one that we still share with them across 40,000 years. Every painted handprint, every charging mammoth, is a fossil of a modern human mind in action. They provide us with a unique window, not into a primitive consciousness, but into a cognitive world that was already fully formed, already capable of abstraction, planning, and profound symbolic communication. This cognitive revolution, preserved in pigment and stone, is the unshakable foundation upon which every human invention, from the wheel to the written word, would eventually be built. These ancient compositions are the world's first recorded stories, painted not on pages but on stone. The panel known as the Shaft of the Dead Man in Lascaux tells a haunting tale. A bird-headed man lies fallen, his simple stick figure form contrasting with the massive, powerful bison standing before him. The bison itself is wounded, its entrails spilling out, its head turned aggressively toward the human figure. Between them lies a spear, and a staff topped with a bird stands abandoned. This is not a simple hunting scene. It is a dense narrative, a single frozen moment loaded with drama and consequence. Was it a record of a tragic hunt, a mythological account of a hero's encounter with a spirit beast, or perhaps a shaman's vision of his own symbolic death and transformation, with the bird symbolizing a soul leaving the body? We cannot know the exact plot, but the emotional gravity of the story is unmistakable. It speaks of danger, sacrifice, and the fragile boundary between human and animal worlds. This was their epic poetry, rendered in ochre and charcoal. In the profound darkness of the Chauvet cave, another kind of story unfolds. Here, artists painted majestic panels where animals seemed to move in great processions. Piażułowski's horses, woolly rhinoceroses, and cave lions flow across the rock in repeated sequences. This careful composition feels less like a snapshot and more like a grand, cyclical narrative. It could represent the eternal rhythm of the seasons, the migration of herds that govern their lives, or even a creation myth describing how the world and its creatures came to be. The repetition itself is a form of storytelling, emphasizing the perpetual return of life, death, and renewal that defined their existence. The cave wall was not a static canvas. In many sites, we find a powerful practice known as superimposition, where new images were painted directly over older ones. A magnificent bison might be drawn over the faint outline of a mammoth, which itself covers a series of hand stencils from centuries earlier. This was not a lack of space or respect. It was because the wall itself was a living, sacred document. Each generation was adding its own chapter to an ongoing saga, connecting their present to a deep and powerful past. By adding their voice to the same spot, they were reinforcing the spiritual potency of the location and weaving their community into the unbroken thread of the story. These visual narratives were the bedrock of a rich oral tradition. Long before writing, these compositions served as memory aids for epic poems, complex genealogies, and sacred laws. An elder could point to the scene of the bird-headed man and recount the entire myth of the first hunter. A series of dots and lines next to a pregnant horse might encode the knowledge of animal gestation cycles or the correct time to follow the herds. The stories transmitted essential survival knowledge, historical events, and the moral codes that bound the community together. They answered the great questions of existence and provided a framework for understanding our unpredictable world. By learning to read the relationships between the figures, the direction of a charge, the overlap of bodies, we begin to decipher these ancient scripts. We glimpse their fears of starvation, their hopes for a successful hunt, and their awe before the forces of nature. These stories are inseparable from the land itself, painted in the very heart of the earth that sustained them. The paintings were not silent. For decades, we focused only on what our eyes could see in the torchlight, but we were missing half the story. The caves had a voice. A new field of science called Archaeoacoustics is now listening, and what it hears is revolutionizing our perception of these sacred spaces. By mapping the sound properties of caves, researchers have made a stunning discovery. The most visually spectacular panels, the grand galleries of bison and horses, are almost always located in the chambers with the most powerful acoustics. In the cave of Niox, the very chamber where majestic bison are painted on the walls transforms a simple chant into a thunderous, echoing chorus. The space itself seems to amplify the sound, filling the darkness with a palpable, vibrating energy. This was no coincidence. The caves were not just chosen for their smooth walls, but for their sonic souls. The artists and ritual participants were not just painters, they were composers in a cathedral of stone. The echoes and resonances were not a byproduct, they were a feature. In an atmosphere already charged with the flicker of fire and the scent of burning fat, the booming reverberation of a drum or a voice could profoundly alter human consciousness. The sound would bounce off the walls, disorienting the listener, blurring the line between the self and the surrounding space. This sensory overload was likely a deliberate technique to help shamans or initiates enter trance states where the world of the spirits felt tangibly close. In that echoing din, the pounding rhythm might have been perceived as the heartbeat of the earth, and the distorted voices could easily be interpreted as the ancestors or animal spirits speaking from the rock itself. This transforms the cave from a silent gallery into a multi-sensory portal. The experience was holistic, meant to be absorbed through the eyes, the ears, and the very bones. You did not just go to see the bison, you went to hear its spirit roar back at you from the dark, to feel the vibration of its power in your chest. The art was part of a performance, a ritual where sight and sound fused to create a reality more real than the one outside. This deep integration of sound challenges us to stop thinking of these places as museums and to start understanding them as instruments, meticulously crafted by nature and played by our ancestors to orchestrate a connection with the unseen. The cave walls may have been a canvas for the stars. Beyond the echoing chambers and the spirit animals, some researchers believe our ancestors were mapping the heavens themselves. This controversial idea suggests that the very same dots and lines we once saw as mere trance visions could also represent constellations and lunar cycles, turning the cave into a sophisticated astronomical observatory. Look at the famous bull panel in Lascaux. Some scholars argue that the arrangement of the animals is not random, but a depiction of the summer triangle, a bright asterism formed by the stars Vega, Deneb, and Altair. The great bull itself might correspond to the constellation we know as Taurus, a celestial creature painted in ochre on a stone sky. The evidence is not only in the static images, but in their relationship to time. The seasonal migration of the herds they so carefully painted, the appearance of certain animals at specific times of year could have functioned as a primitive calendar. A panel showing calving bison might mark the spring equinox, a vital piece of knowledge for predicting animal movements and planning communal hunts. This theory aligns with what we know of later monuments like Stonehenge, which was precisely engineered to track the sun's journey. If these interpretations are correct, it means the cave artists were not just earth-bound shamans, they were the first astronomers. They were tracking celestial patterns, using their art to encode a cosmic understanding that linked the rhythm of the stars directly to the survival of their tribe. The cave was not just a portal to the spirit world, but a planetarium. This would add a breathtaking layer of sophistication to their symbolic communication, a perfect fusion of the terrestrial and the celestial. It suggests a mind that could see the patterns connecting the movement of a star with the birth of a calf and record that connection for all time. This cosmic ambition forces us to look back into the deep shadows of the cave and ask who exactly was holding the lamp, who possessed the intellect and the vision to blend art, spirituality, and science into one enduring message. A red dot in a Spanish cave is more than a mark, it is a challenge. Dated to over 64,000 years ago, these simple painted symbols from La Pasiega and Maltreviso were created at a time when Europe was the exclusive domain of Neanderthals. Our own species had not yet arrived on the continent. This single, startling fact ignites a firestorm in our understanding of human uniqueness. For generations, we have built our identity on a simple premise that the spark of complex art and symbolic thought was the magic that made us, Homo sapiens, special. We imagined our cousins, the Neanderthals, as brutish and simple, incapable of such profound abstraction. But these ancient red ochre symbols, these lines and hand stencils, stand as silent, stubborn witnesses against that comforting story. If they were made by Neanderthal hands, then everything we thought we knew about the origins of the human mind is wrong. This is not just about who painted a cave wall first. It is about the very nature of consciousness itself. Could a different kind of human with a differently shaped brain have possessed the same capacity for language, for ritual, for seeing the world as a place of symbols and hidden meanings? The evidence suggests they did. It points to a cognitive complexity we never granted them, an inner life rich with its own stories and beliefs. This forces a humbling and profound shift. Our deepest ancestry is not a solitary lineage leading only to us. It is a tangled family tree where another branch may have shared the same creative light. The cave walls are asking us to listen to a ghost, to hear the whisper of a mind not our own, and in doing so, to completely redefine what it means to be human. The long-held image of a lone male hunter painting his prey in a dark cave is fading. For generations, we assumed these sacred spaces were a male domain, their art a form of hunting magic to ensure a successful kill. But the walls themselves tell a different story when we learn how to listen. A meticulous forensic analysis of the hand stencils found across Europe has yielded a stunning revelation. By measuring the relative lengths of the fingers, researchers discovered that a significant number of these prints were not made by men. The distinct proportions, with the ring finger often longer than the index finger in male hands, were frequently absent. Instead, the evidence pointed decisively to the hands of women. Many other stencils were small and slender, clearly belonging to adolescents and even young children. This simple anatomical fact shatters the old narrative. The caves were not a private male sanctuary, but a communal canvas. The very act of leaving a handprint, that fundamental declaration of "I was here," was shared across the entire community. The footprints preserved in the soft clay floors of caves like Tuc Dordabat confirm this inclusive picture. Alongside the prints of adults, we find the smaller, fainter impressions of children's feet, tracing paths through the dark chambers. These are not the random scuffs of play, but deliberate steps, suggesting their presence was part of a ritual, an initiation, or a lesson. This evidence invites us to reimagine the roles within these ancient societies. Women were likely far more than gatherers of plants. They were likely the creators and keepers of profound symbolic knowledge. They may have been the artists who painted symbols related to fertility, the cycles of the moon, or the intricate plant lore essential for medicine and food. Their handprints on the wall could signify their role as spiritual leaders, ritual specialists, or the storytellers who passed down the clan's identity from one generation to the next. The presence of children hints at a society deeply invested in its own future. They were not sheltered from the sacred, but brought into it, perhaps to learn the stories behind the paintings, to participate in ceremonies, or to make their own first, tentative marks as part of a rite of passage. This transforms our understanding of Paleolithic life from a simple struggle for survival into a complex, collaborative culture. The transmission of knowledge was not a secret handed down from a single shaman to an apprentice. It was a shared responsibility, a collective effort where every member, regardless of age or gender, had a part to play in weaving the fabric of their world. The art itself was the thread that bound them all together, a testament to a society that understood its strength lay in its unity. This richer, more inclusive picture reminds us that the story of human origins is not a solo performance, but a chorus of countless voices, each leaving their own unique mark on the stone. The painted bison was more than an image, it was a hard drive. In a world without written words, the cave wall functioned as a permanent, communal memory. Every carefully rendered animal and every cryptic symbol was a storage device for the tribe's most vital knowledge, a technology of survival etched in ochre and charcoal. An elder could stand before a panel and, by pointing to a specific scene, unlock an entire oral narrative. That painting of a wounded mammoth was not just a picture. It was the anchor for a story about a dangerous hunt, a lesson that detailed the animal's behavior, the best approach for a spear thrust, and the critical importance of each hunter's role in the coordinated attack. The knowledge of which plants were edible, which seasons were best for hunting certain game, and the complex genealogies that defined social relationships, all of this essential information was encoded in the art and passed down through the spoken stories it triggered. The abstract signs we see, the dots and lines, likely served as a visual filing system. A series of strokes might help a storyteller recall the sequence of a creation myth, while a handprint could mark the beginning of a ritual that must be performed with exact precision. This created a powerful, living system where the permanence of the image on the stone supported the fluid, evolving nature of the spoken word. The cave was a library, but it was a library that required a librarian, a knowledgeable elder to bring its silent shelves to life. This crucial function explains the remarkable consistency in artistic styles across vast stretches of time. The way a horse was drawn in one generation had to be recognizable to the next, because that specific outline was the key that unlocked a specific set of instructions or a sacred story. Individual artistic flair was secondary to the paramount need for clarity and consistency. The survival of the entire group depended on this visual language being read correctly, decade after decade, century after century. This was how they built a world, not with bricks but with stories painted in the dark, a testament to the human mind's relentless drive to preserve its wisdom for the future. These ancient maps of the mind reveal a consciousness awakening to its own existence. The shift from crafting a hand axe for cutting to painting a handprint for communicating was a cognitive big bang. It marks the precise moment we became behaviorally modern, when our minds began to grapple not just with how to survive, but with why we are here at all. The art is a fossilized record of that struggle, a testament to the first time a human looked at a charging bison and saw more than just meat and danger. They saw a spirit, a power, a mystery that demanded an explanation. This is where religion, philosophy, and science were born, not as separate disciplines, but as a single, unified effort to comprehend a vast and often frightening world. The paintings are prayers for a successful hunt, yes, but they are also early experiments in biology, capturing the precise anatomy of an animal. They are philosophical inquiries into the relationship between humans and the rest of nature, questioning our place in the great web of life. And they are scientific observations, tracking the cycles of the moon and the seasons through abstract codes. This art is the birthplace of wonder. It is the physical evidence of a mind capable of feeling deep reverence for the forces that governed its life and profound fear of the darkness beyond the firelight. That simple red dot is not just a symbol, it is the first question mark. Why are we here? What happens when we die? What is our responsibility to the world that feeds us? The attempt to answer these questions, to make meaning out of chaos, is the very core of the human impulse to create. Every painting, every handprint was an act of meaning-making. It was a way to impose order on our unpredictable existence, to create stories that made the world feel less random and more intentional. When we stand before these images today, we are not just looking at pictures of animals. We are peering directly into the cognitive and emotional landscape of our ancestors. We see their capacity for imagination, for abstraction, for belief. We see the origins of our own innate need to tell stories, to worship, to investigate, and to leave behind a mark that says, "I was here and I wondered." This internal map is the most profound legacy of the cave artists. It connects our modern, complex consciousness directly to those first, brilliant sparks in the dark. That creative spark in the dark was far more than a pastime. It was a profound survival tool. Evolutionary psychologists propose that the very impulse to make art gave our ancestors a critical edge in a brutal world. The ability to think symbolically, to let a dot stand for the moon or a handprint represent a person, was a cognitive revolution. This skill enabled them to plan complex, long-term projects, like the coordinated effort needed to paint the Great Hall of Lascaux. Such endeavors required more than just muscle. They demanded advanced social coordination and sophisticated problem-solving. A group that could successfully execute a multi-stage artistic project was a group that could also organize a dangerous hunt or manage scarce resources with greater efficiency. Art became the glue of group identity. A community that shared a common set of symbols that gathered for rituals in the flickering light before the same sacred bison was a community bound tightly together. This shared identity was a matter of life and death. In a landscape of competing human groups and formidable predators, a cohesive tribe with strong social bonds was more likely to cooperate, share food, and defend itself successfully. The cave wall was a communal hard drive, and the art was the software. By developing a shared symbolic language, our ancestors drastically improved their ability to communicate complex ideas. A series of dots could record a lunar cycle, teaching the next generation when to expect migrating herds. A specific way of drawing a horse could encode knowledge about its behavior, information vital for a successful hunt. This system allowed them to transmit intricate knowledge across generations with a reliability that oral tradition alone could not always guarantee. The very act of creating art may have physically shaped the brain for the better. The neural plasticity involved in artistic creation, the forging of new connections while envisioning and executing a painting, would have enhanced overall cognitive flexibility. This mental agility allowed them to adapt to changing environments, to innovate new tools, and to solve novel problems. In this light, the artists of the deep caves were not merely decorators or mystics. They were pioneers of the mind, engaging in a behavior that made their communities smarter, more unified, and infinitely more adaptable. The cave wall was the ultimate training ground for the modern human brain, a space where our core capacities for planning, cooperation, and abstract thought were relentlessly honed. This perspective reframes art from a leisurely luxury into a fundamental pillar of our evolutionary success. That deep-seated impulse to create, to make our mark and share a story, is not a frivolous add-on. It is an ancient, hardwired part of what made us and continues to define us today. A handprint on a cave wall and a profile picture on a social media platform are separated by 40,000 years, yet they pulse with the same human energy. Both are declarations of identity, a way of saying to the world, "This is me, I exist in this community." The red ochre stencil was an individual's unique mark in a sacred space, just as your chosen avatar is your personal emblem in the vast digital landscape. The fundamental need to project our identity into a shared realm has not changed, only the chemistry of the canvas. That ancient drive to say, "I was here," now finds its voice in a username and a digital signature. Our ancestors gathered in the flickering dark to witness the newest bison painted on the chamber wall, a collective experience that bound them together. Today, we gather around the glowing screens of our devices to witness the same kind of communal storytelling, whether it is a blockbuster film or a viral video. We are still that same species drawn together by narratives. The cave was, in every meaningful sense, the original social network. It was a physical platform where people reinforced their group identity, shared vital knowledge, and created collective meaning. The echoing chamber where chants rose before the spirit animals has its direct parallel in the comment section of a post, where 1,000 voices converge to create a new, shared understanding. The medium has evolved from mineral pigments on limestone to fleeting pixels on a glass screen, but the driver behind it all remains our uniquely human consciousness, a mind that cannot help but express itself and seek connection. Recognizing this profound continuity grounds our frantic modern lives in a deep, comforting historical context. Your scroll through a feed is not a meaningless distraction. It is the latest expression of an ancient ritual. It is the current chapter in the oldest story we know, the human story of finding our place by leaving a mark and sharing it with the tribe. These ancient marks are the foundational texts of the human experience, a library written in ochre and charcoal. Far from simple doodles, they document the very birth of our modern mind, capturing the moment we first learned to think in symbols, to build complex societies, and to wrestle with the spiritual forces of the world. From the intimate declaration of a handprint to the grand, sweeping narratives of the hunt, this art connects us directly to the consciousness of our deepest ancestors. It reveals that the core questions they grappled with all those millennia ago are the very questions that still define us today. Who are we? What is our place in this vast, living world? How do we find meaning in the face of our own mortality? The philosopher Mircea Eliade suggested that in understanding the sacred, we come to understand ourselves. The caves were their sacred ground, the birthplace of wonder, and their art is a testament to a shared human spirit that transcends time. This exploration is a powerful reminder of our common, ancient heritage, a lineage of creativity and connection that stretches back over 40,000 years. I would love to hear how this journey into our past has resonated with you. Please share your reflections in the comments below, and if you are drawn to these mysteries of history, subscribe to continue the exploration.